Hello and welcome to Qtr Time podcast in partnership with Lovell Netball. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P. And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed.
At Qtr Time Pod, we are big advocates of being open when talking about periods. And so we're really pleased to say that our friends at Modibody have collaborated with Puma to launch a new range of active period underwear to keep you free from leaks, sweat and discharge when you work out, no matter the time of the month.
This active period underwear collection comes in 3 styles and a range of sizes, absorbencies and 2 colourways. If you're passionate about the planet, then you'll be pleased to know they are made from 82% recycled material.
As sponsors of the podcast, Modibody are delighted to offer our listeners an exclusive 15% discount on the collection at modibody.com if you use the code QTR Modibody. You can find all the T's and C's and the code in the podcast notes.
Go check it out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another week of Qtr Time podcast. Luce, this has been such a huge week of netball. Like, I've actually lost track of everything that's happened across the globe. Like, it's all kind of merged into one. And I'm like, oh my God, all of this has happened in the space of a week. It's been nuts.
I know. It's been absolutely mega. I can't believe it.
Yeah, well, we're going to give you a little rundown of all the stuff that's happened this week. But first, Luce, what have we got coming up on the episode today?
Well, first we'll run through our 3-word summaries of round 17. 17!
17!
I know, in the Netball Super League, as well as revealing our game of the round and our player of the round. In honour of Mental Health Awareness Week this week, our special guest is the incredible Thwaites. Caitlin has been a huge advocate for speaking openly about mental health, and she shares her experience and some advice for anyone who is battling with their mental health challenges or who knows someone who is. It's a really, really special conversation. I'm so excited for this one, and we can't wait to share it with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I had the biggest fangirl moment. She is one of my all-time favourite players. I couldn't believe I was actually getting to speak to her.
She's a fan
really
favourite. She is a fan favourite.
She absolutely is, definitely. So before we get into our summaries, we're just going to run you through all the netball news from this week. So we launched a bonus episode this week on the Roses squad announcement for the Netball World Cup, which is huge. Really privileged to chat to the biggest names in the world of netball. So do check that out if you haven't already. We're also launching a giveaway this week, cheeky little giveaway, for a couple of pairs of Fast 5 tickets. So head over to our social pages for all of the info on how to enter, and the winners will be revealed next week.
And there's also more news, not great news, I have to say. But the first thing to say is that the Collingwood Magpies are doing a review of their netball programme, and it's unconfirmed if they will play again next year. However, Kelly Ryan has said unequivocally that there will be 8 teams in the 2024 SSN season. So we'll have to see what unfolds there. Bit concerning. And finally, the Europe Netball Open Challenge took place last weekend, with Gibraltar winning Division 2 and UAE winning Division 1. So big congratulations to everyone who took part in that.
Yeah, it's really great to watch some of that on the Europe Netball YouTube channel. So if you haven't, you can go back and have a little look and treat yourself to even more netball. So moving on then to our 3-word summaries of round 17 of the Netball Super League. First up, we've got Rhinos versus Lightning, with Lightning taking a big win, 72-56. And I've said top 4 confirmed. It was with this win that Lightning have been confirmed for the top 4, and now all of our finalists have booked their spots with 3 rounds still to go, which probably isn't great for the league as a whole, but hey-ho. It was a 16-goal victory, 2 more goals difference than when the sides met back in round 7. And although Lightning won every quarter, the second, third and fourth were only a difference of 3, so quite a competitive game in that sense. Oyosola, again, just absolutely insane. She had the most turnovers on court with 5. She also had 8 deflections too, which when you're up against the likes of a Mary Chollock, that's a pretty good day at the office. Lightning are just so settled now with their lineup, which they have been pretty much all season. They brought Thacker on again in the second half, who offers something really different to the likes of Aria Dixon. And I think it just sets them up so well in terms of their versatility for finals netball.
Yeah, completely agree with you on that. I think they're really hitting their stride at the right time.
Definitely.
Next up, it was Dragons versus Storm, with Storm taking the win 48-47. Very,
Oof.
very close game. And I said thriving and surviving. I really thought we were in for our first major upset of the season with this one, and such a pity that it wasn't streamed, as I imagine it would have been the game of the round by a mile. For Dragons, defensively, they were far stronger than Storm in this game. They had more than double the number of turnovers, 15-6, with Ella Pal-Davies alone getting more intercepts than the entire of Storm collectively.
Wow.
But they were also solid in attack, with Dunn shooting 30 from 30 and Sinclair putting in the hard work too, with 17 goals. For Storm, SDL put up the same number of shots as Wells and Rushton combined, so a really massive shift from her, but they just could not win enough ball to stamp their authority in this game. They've got to go back to the drawing board because I think their finals chances are decreasing exponentially with narrow wins like this against teams at the bottom of the table.
Yeah, you did, like, no disrespect to Dragons, but you would have expected this to be a pretty comfortable win. So full credit to them for really bringing it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Following this was Bath versus Thunder, with Thunder taking a narrow win at 67-63. And I've said the Metcalf effect. I mean, again, what a cracking game this was. Thunder were without Metcalf in this game, and I think it really showed in their attacking ability. Although Christian and Carter, they did do well. They absolutely worked their socks off with 44 and 30 feeds apiece. Their route to goal just didn't feel as easy. And it was made all the more difficult by that pesky Jada Pekova, who really had a brilliant game. And speaking of Bath, they've actually earned themselves a record this season by being the side that scored the most goals against Thunder in a single quarter. Even when, it's interesting, right? Even when Thunder lost to Pulse, the most scored against them in a single quarter was 20, and Bath scored 21 in quarter two. So that's a big win for them.
Wow. And then it made Karen Gregg ring the changes in the second half, didn't it? Bringing on the big guns. But wowza, props to them. Next up on Saturday, it was Sirens versus Pulse, with Pulse taking the win 53-46. And I said ups and downs. This was a bit of a seesaw game and quite scrappy at times, 33 unforced errors in total, which is pretty high. Wow. The ups, you could say, were that Sirens really came out firing and their connections were very strong in that first quarter, particularly the balance between Goodwin and McCall in the shooting circle. And from a Pulse perspective, they were able to dig themselves out of the hole to come away with the points, which is obviously good practice for the crunch point at the end of the season. On the not so good side for this game, the injury to Fumi Fadoju in the final minutes. We don't know what happened, or there's no update yet. No statement's been released by Pulse. It looked ankle/calf-ish. But again, there's been no update. I mean, we're just sending her all the best. I am seriously happy to send any ankle or lower limb element necessary to ensure her swift recovery ahead of the Netball World Cup. I'm putting that out there. Sam Bird, I will get a doctor straight away. Anything she needs, I can provide.
Oh, man, we all just need to manifest the healing vibes. And because that would be absolutely devastating for England and for her, like, to miss.
I can't bear it. I can't.
We move on. She's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And so final game of the round then was Stars versus Mavericks, with Mavericks taking a narrow win 54-50. And I've gone for Vengeance is Sweet. Again, another great game, another close game. On paper, there isn't really a lot that separates these two sides. And Stars obviously came away with the spoils in round one, beating Mavs at 59-55. So again, a 4-goal gap. And Mavs will have been really pleased to be able to turn the tables this time round. Mavs have now won 4 away games on the bounce and have also won more games in the second half of the 2023 season than they did in the first half, with 3 games left to play against Bath, Thunder and Pulse. So some pretty tough games coming up, but they've really progressed well towards this sort of latter half of the season.
Yeah, and I think you can really see that in terms of the win-loss record. It has improved. And I actually wonder, and this sort of segues into our game of the round, which was Stars versus Mavericks. I actually wonder whether Mavs, I mean, they were so devastated to lose that first encounter, and it was almost like a bit of a slap in the face at the first hurdle. That's mixing so many metaphors, but do you know what I mean? Like, kind of, it made them think like, oh, crikey. And I think that rattled them for a couple of weeks after that as well. But in this game, I mean, they just really wanted it. And the story of their rivalry is really fascinating as well. You know, there's a lot in commentary talking about how narrow the margins are between them. And they're now sort of really like joint on points after this game, like vying for that 5th position. So it made it really juicy. And although there were a lot of turnovers, 14 apiece, in fact, it sometimes made the game feel like a bit of ping pong. But I actually think it was due to the defensive efforts of both sides. They just really piled on that pressure. It was great to see.
Yeah, I'd completely agree. And I actually think that Mavs did a cracking job of really stifling Siggy Berger in this game, which, in fairness to her, not many teams have been able to do this season.
Yeah.
She only shot 26 goals, which was at 100%. She didn't miss a single one, so great job. But she normally averages about 42 a game. So that's a stark difference. And it meant that Namina really had to step up to the plate and increase her shooting load, which she did. She shot 24 from 33 at 72%, which is probably lower accuracy than what she's hoping for. But it is an increase from her game average number of goals, which is approximately 16. So she did step up to the plate in this game.
Yeah, and also some of the ones that she was firing in were some real long bombs as well. I mean, she's got a beautiful shooting action, really like Ecanasio vibes, isn't it?
So
that really high shot.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's never going in. And then it goes in. It's unbelievable. But also at the other end of the court, Jazz Brown. I mean, she's just burst onto the scenes this year and she's loving life. She had 4 rebounds, 4 intercepts, and 10 deflections in this game. She has been quite heavily penalised, draws a lot of whistle. So if she can tidy that up, I think she'll be a real threat for years to come. I don't know how tall she is, but she looks pretty tall to me. And that is a very big bonus when it comes to future goalkeepers for England, etc. You know, we were talking about that goalkeeper, goal defence cover, you know, and that height in the goal circle. I think it could be really interesting.
I'd love to know how tall she is. If anyone knows, we did try and look it up, but we couldn't find it. But she must be in excess of 6 foot, I would have said.
Yeah, I'd say she's 6'2", maybe 6'2".
Yeah. So if you know, Joe Tripp, if you're listening, get in touch, let us know. But I think looking at Mavs, I think it was another great showing for them defensively as well. Monique Mayer was on a mad one in this game. She had 7 turnovers on her own, and her combination with Kwashi, I think, is really growing. They won so much ball, and that's without Jodie Gibson, who I think is out injured. We haven't had an update on her for a little while, but turning over that much ball without a ball winner like Jodie is really impressive.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think as well that at the other end, Mavs are getting to grips with how to feed Britt Clark. You know, there's another injury, obviously, to Ina Marie Venter. We haven't seen her for quite a few weeks either, sending her best wishes and everything. But Britt Clark obviously has stepped up in that role, and it's a very different style of play. And so I think Mavs are starting to get the grips with how they feed her and where she wants the ball and how that attack end needs to work. I also think this is the first time this season that we've seen Mavs run out a full 7 for the entire game, which I thought was quite interesting. Why do you think that was?
I hadn't actually clocked that. That's really intriguing. I think for me, I imagine part of it is to do with Camilla's first season as head coach. Like, obviously, the sort of buck kind of stops with you, the decision making lays on your shoulders. And I think, I mean, this is completely just my opinion. But I think maybe at the start of the season, Camilla was a little bit like I am in games with my coaching hat on, and a bit trigger happy when it comes to making changes if something's not working. But I think she's really grown as well as the players have grown throughout the season. And I think now she's able to trust them a little bit more because they've shown more consistency and better quality play on court. And so I think it's probably a bit of a mixture of all those different things. But yeah, that's quite interesting. Hadn't I even clocked that?
Yeah, and I think as well, I mean, they were ahead for most of the game. In fact, pretty much all of the game, I think, by about 2 or 3 goals, and it kept going up and down and up and down. So I suppose there's a sense of also not, you know, if it's not broken, don't fix it type thing. But yeah, really interesting game. I actually thought this round was very strong. We had 3 really competitive, close games, and it does feel like the second half of the season has been much closer.
Much closer, but I will say it does feel it's been a little bit scrappier. I think a bit of the sort of end of season fatigue starting to come in for a lot of players now. But it is nice to have those kind of closer contests, even if they are scrappy.
Yeah, completely agree.
So moving on to our player of the round then. This week we have gone for Sirens Dynamo. It's Thwaites Vinkumbo. There were times...
Did you mean for that to rhyme?
No. Did it rhyme?
You're a poet and you did not realise. Yeah. Sorry,
well,
anyway.
There you go. But for me, there were times in this game that Thwaites was basically single-handedly keeping Sirens in the contest against Pulse. She had 9 turnovers, which is just 1 less than Fumi in this game. 5 of those were intercepts. So just really amazing stuff from her. She had 2 rebounds and 2 out of 3 of her deflections resulted in a turnover as well. So winning so much ball. Speaking of which, she's top of the table for intercepts with 58 and Fran Williams is second with 49. So quite a way ahead. And she's top of the league for turnovers with 90. But Shaquanda's nipping at her heels in second with 87. But I mean, to be top of the table in 2 different defensive stats is so impressive.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And her hustle and hassle is just relentless. I think she's a very special athlete and we're very lucky to have her in the Super League.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think she's picked up more whistle this season than last season. This is my real V feel moment here. That is not based on stats. I should probably go and look that up actually. But
no, but she's had quite a few warnings recently.
Which I don't think she got as many last year. So probably something to look at. But yeah, really, really great athlete.
Coming up after the break, we chat to Caitlin Thwaites on the topic of mental health. I don't know about you, Luce, but it gets to this point in the season and all I'm thinking about is getting new trainers. You know, when you're just eyeing them up all the way through, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, I love a bit of new stash, but I'm the type of person, I'll put all of these things into my basket, spend hours and hours looking around, but then I'll never actually go through with it. It just sits in my basket forevermore.
It's so true. I know, honestly, can relate. But luckily, Lovell Netball are offering a 15% discount on all first-time orders with code NETPOD15 at lovellnetball.co.uk. So you're sorted.
Yeah, and honestly, Lovell Netball is the place to go. Whatever you want, they've got absolutely everything.
Everything. Such a good range. Yeah.
So whether you're looking for trainers, you're looking for bibs, you're looking for supports, whatever you need.
Sports bras, all of that stuff.
Sports bras, exactly. They have got you covered. So don't forget, that's a 15% discount off all first-time orders with the code NETPOD15 at lovellnetball.co.uk.
Love a bit of Lovell. Oh my God.
Love a bit of Lovell.
Love a bit of Lovell. Happy shopping, guys.
I am truly honoured to welcome one of my favourite players. I am having a little bit of a fangirl moment, I'm not going to lie. It's Caitlin Thwaites on the podcast. How are you doing, Katie?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks so much for having me and for reaching out.
Oh, it is our pleasure. Honestly, you are one of my favourite all-time players ever. And you're actually one of the first players that kind of really got me into the game. So it's kind of having a bit of a full circle moment now to be able to chat to you. It really is an absolute privilege.
Very kind of you to say.
This week in the UK is Mental Health Awareness Week, and we quite often discuss the topic of mental health on the podcast in sort of tying into lots of other topics that we talk about, but we've never actually done a specific episode on it. So we thought, who better to do an episode on this than with someone who's been an incredible advocate for being open and discussing mental health, and who's been so generous in sharing difficult experiences in the public sphere. The charity Mind reports that 1 in 4 people in the UK will be affected by mental illness in any year, the most common being depression and anxiety. So it really is a privilege, isn't it, Luce, for us to be able to open up such an important conversation with a topic that impacts so many of the netball family. So thank you very much for joining us today. Now, you have had an amazing career, both domestically and internationally, and you are widely regarded as one of the most exceptional shooters in the game. You've notched up 55 caps for the Diamonds, well over 200 National League matches in an astounding 18 years of elite netball. The achievements in your career just speak for themselves, but throughout this, you've lived with incredible challenges away from the courts, and you were diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety when you were 21. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of why you've decided to be so public and be so vocal about your experience with mental health?
Well, I think for me, it's probably about, one, reducing some of the stigma around it. So if there are more people that are open and talking about it, it normalizes it, and it means that more people are willing to seek help. If they're feeling like it's not such a taboo topic anymore. It's, so many people, like you said, mentioned, like the stats are so high in terms of the prevalence of it within our society. So for people to feel like they're not alone is a really big one for me. But when I was initially diagnosed, one of the biggest things for me that helped in the first instance was actually seeking out others who had had those experiences and other sports people that had had similar experiences to what I was going through. So to be able to read, a couple of biographies, a couple of books, hear some other people talk about what they had been through, and for me to have those aha moments of, oh, it's not just me, and these people were able to still have flourishing careers on the sporting field, or whatever career path that they had, and they were still able to do those things whilst managing their mental health. And so that for me, I guess, initially it wasn't necessarily something that I wanted to share so openly about. I did let, I guess, the people close to me know that that's what I was going through. And initially I was quite open as well with my immediate netball team that I was with. And I guess that was more from an aspect of, I was going through a whole bunch of challenges, and I felt like they deserved to know what was going on with me, because it was displayed a bit in my behavior, I guess. People were picking up on, I was late to trainings and things like that. I was, dealing with anxiousness, forgetfulness, weight gain, weight loss at times, sleeplessness, insomnia, hypersomnia, like so many different symptoms that people were, noticing a little bit. So for me to be able to share with my immediate team that was what I was kind of navigating and going through, I kind of firstly thought that opening up to people might actually mean that I've got more people within my support network. And if I let them in, then more people can kind of help and assist me through this. But initially it was actually almost the opposite, which is quite sad to say, that I told people that I was struggling with depression and had been diagnosed with that and anxiety. And I thought that, people were going to have open arms and wrap me up and help me through what I was going through. But it was actually almost the opposite. And after dealing with a little bit of disappointment around that, I came to realize a bit later that it wasn't from their lack of want to help me. There was genuine caring people and, people that did want to assist and help. But at the time, I'm talking almost 20 years ago, people didn't have the dialogue and they didn't know how to help. So that was one of the really big things for me that stood out, that I wanted to change, and I wanted to be a part of, even upskilling and allowing the people around me to have those conversations and have some of those really tough conversations. And if people feel awkward talking to me about it, then the next person that they come across and with the same thing, they're going to know how to assist and how to help that person a little bit better, because they've attempted to have some of those awkward conversations with me. So that's probably where it's come from for me, wanting to help others and try to reduce some of that stigma so that people do reach out for help.
I mean, I think that's incredible because it's so difficult to do. Like, I know from my own personal experience, like Luce has been amazing supporting me. Like, I honestly would not be the person I am without her. But it is so difficult to open up to those around you, and especially if you didn't feel like you received the level of support that you wanted initially. Obviously a very different time back then. There's so much more discourse and support, and I suppose a comfortability more now than there was back then. So it's completely different circumstances. But thank goodness that we have kind of trailblazers like you and like Nat Butler we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago talking about her miscarriages and her fertility problems and all of that to be able to help the people who come after her. And I think that is absolutely astounding. And we listened to a really amazing podcast that you did where you said that if you could go back in time, you would actually choose to keep your diagnosis because it's taught you so much about yourself, which I think is incredible. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you've sort of come to that place now where you're able to really own your experience and appreciate the growth that's come with overcoming the difficulties that you face?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of shocked and astounded if you could choose to go through this or to deal with this or not. And for me, it probably falls back a little bit on a little bit of a philosophy of taking back, mistakes or bad things that have happened in my life would mean that I hadn't learnt from them or I haven't learnt those lessons, and therefore I'm able to navigate and apply those lessons for me moving forward. So that's, I guess, a little bit of an explanation as to why I think that it's grown me into the person that I am. It has assisted me and I guess put me on a path of firstly self-exploration and how strong am I to know what I can get through, all of the tools and things that I've learnt about how to navigate dealing with sometimes really quite poor mental health and being able to get out there and perform, do my job, play in Commonwealth Games gold medal finals while I'm suffering from anxiety and all of those types of things. So going through the path and the journey that I have had, and obviously through many kind of ups and downs across my time, it's meant that I've now got a really good understanding of myself, understanding of the red flags. I talk about kind of red flags and things that mental health might start to present that I'm kind of sliding down that scale a little bit, and how to intervene with that really early. So I kind of occasionally talk about it as if you feel like it's, you're on a slippery slope down into a bit of a depressive hole. Well, initially the start of that is not very steep. Like it's, you might start to, it's just like a little bit of a gradual decline. And that's where, for me, it's really important to intervene then, before I start to lose my footholds and before that slope becomes a lot steeper, because getting into the real depth of that hole, that is the depths of depression for me, the sense of starting to lose hope and starting to lose the motivation to do anything to help yourself. I've been in those places, and it is incredibly hard to find any kind of that motivation or the will to try to get yourself out. So understanding and being able to pull yourself out at that shallow entry point, where you've still got footholds, you've still got things to grab onto and kind of pull yourself out, and the motivation and the want to pull yourself out. But when the gravel starts to get a bit slippery, it really becomes quite hard. So knowing and understanding, recognizing for me some of those red flags that mean that I might be on that little decline, and then also knowing the treatments and the interventions that I can put in place to be able to climb myself back out before I get to a place that's too severe. So yeah, and that's through a lot of trial and error. I think what works for me, and things that work for me and the way that it presents for me could be very different to somebody who's got the exact same diagnosis. And a lot of those learnings I mentioned before about, reading some books from different people that have experienced these things, I would learn different bits and pieces. Oh, this person tried that, maybe I should try that, or and so a lot of that trial and error meant that I could go to that bag of tricks and bag of tools that I have built. And I talk about interventions and treatment, but going for a walk in nature is treatment. Scheduling in some time for yourself is treatment. Booking in your monthly massage, or your, having a nice facial, or those types of things are forms of self-care. And sometimes I need to ramp that up a bit and go, okay, I need to be a lot more conscious around my sleep hygiene and my nutrition and hydration and things, and making sure I am scheduling in those things that I need to do. At times I have relied on medication as well, and seeing psychologists has been a regular thing for me. So, we talk about some of the more medical interventions, but also some of those other things that I deem really important to my own well-being as well.
No, I think that's incredible, and it's a great lesson for everyone actually to sort of be able to really look introspectively and identify what your red flags are, as you say. And like, I know for me, one of my red flags, and at least will know this, is when I don't go to my badminton. I have one day a week, badminton in the evening. That is my what I call my sacred time. It's the only thing I do in the week that isn't netball related. It's just something that is purely for me and a little bit of escapism. And as soon as I start to regularly not go to them, that's an indicator to me that I'm sort of starting to go on a little bit of a slippery slope. So I think it's a great lesson for everyone listening to know what your markers are, what your red flags are, and then how we can go about approaching different types of remedies.
And I would also say to start to recognize things in other people as well, and those kind of small moments, because especially if you're in a team environment, when someone's not right. And actually that sometimes the hardest thing can be sort of going back to what we were talking earlier, like knowing what to say and how to speak to them. But I think even if you're not sure what to say, it's better to say something, because sometimes people's actions are what they're trying to communicate, that they need help, but they don't know how to say it, and to be sort of able to reach out to people is really important. So I say knowing your triggers and knowing your friends is probably something to consider.
Yeah, and I think there's different ways of being able to do that as well. And initially, when I had my diagnosis, there was an element of it wasn't an intentional thing, but I feel like I was actually isolating myself and almost pushing people away. And so having a persistent friend who, and she never talked to me about my mental health, but she was quite forceful in, no, Caitlin, we are catching up. I am meeting you for a coffee. Like, don't brush me off here, because at times for me, it was really hard to get up and, have a shower, and I'd be staying at home all day and wanting to climb back under the covers in bed and things like that. So having those friends that can reach out to you and kind of call you on your bullshit sometimes as well, and not necessarily needing to talk about it all the time, but actually the accountability, having that external accountability of people that you need to meet or people that you're catching up with, like you and your badminton. For me, for a little while, I had a tendency to lose track of time within the day because I was sleeping throughout the day and things like that. So I actually had a teammate as well who would text me when she was leaving for training. So that was my cue to, okay, Caitlin, you need to get yourself sorted and out the door. So there's plenty of different ways to be able to help and assist from a bystander's point of view. And I think the biggest thing to encourage people, if they have got someone in their lives that is, they might be isolating themselves and even to a sense keeping people at a distance, to not take it personally and still try to be there without judgment, because I've definitely also been in those circumstances where I've had friends who are really struggling, and sometimes that person might not be able to accept the help in the way that you are wanting to give it. So just try to remove any kind of personal hurt from your perspective, because those friends, knowing that you're there all the time is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just thinking about that I'm reading this great book at the moment, and it's called I Think You Should Talk to Somebody, and it's about a therapist talking about going to see a therapist and kind of case studies and things like that. And one of the main themes is about how we change in relation to others, and I think that that's really important to remember in a mental health sense, that while you're maybe experiencing something, you may need to reach out to others, but also they need to understand how to relate to you, and maybe that you're not ready for a certain intervention at a different time. And I think that there can be a tendency to want to intervene very strongly with some kind of advice or instruction, or you should do this, you should do that, and actually letting people kind of come to things in their own terms is really important. And when you communicated to your coaches about what was going on and you had your diagnosis, you were actually advised to step away from netball at the time, but you really wanted to keep playing, as it was, in your own words, the only thing that got you out of bed in the morning. However, I imagine netball at the time was also probably fraught with quite a lot of challenges, including not feeling supported by your team, worrying that it would affect your selection, and just being in that kind of high pressure environment, it was also potentially contributing to mental strain. So was netball a safe space for you?
It really was a safe space in the way that, for me, getting out on court, it was a place that I could leave everything else behind, and being able to still contribute and have value. And that's probably the biggest thing about why I didn't want to step away from netball entirely after, I'd had some advice to maybe consider doing that. And that was the biggest thing for me, was that's where I felt that I could contribute and that I had value. And so please don't take away the one place that I feel like I am valued. And in reality, there was plenty more that Caitlin as the human being had to offer, but that wasn't the way that I was seeing it in my own brain. My own brain was, me as a netballer and contributing to this team is the only thing that I had going for me at the time. So for me to be able to get out there, we talk about kind of white line fever. This is a different kind of white line fever, but I feel like I had a really and probably honed this as I got older as well, and heightened my ability to compartmentalize. So the white line fever for me was leaving any of the stress, any of the struggles when I would step onto that court. I wouldn't take that with me. So within the 60 minutes of the game, within the lines of that court, I could be somebody else. And, often we talk about with mental health, people putting on a mask when they go out in public. And the mask that you wear is kind of covering up the real, what you're going through behind the scenes. And for me, being out there on court, I was able to, putting my dress on was like putting my Superwoman cape on, and being able to step out there on the court, even though I was, behind the scenes. If I took that dress and I took that mask off, I was really struggling a lot. So it was a really safe space for me to be able to feel like I could leave my worries behind. Yeah.
I mean, what I find really interesting, and I actually find that with the people in my life who also struggle with their mental health, this feeling of not having value, of having really low self-worth, that seems to be a common thread and a common denominator amongst all the different people that I know. And I think for such a high pressure, high performance environment, did you ever feel like this low self-worth or not feeling valued, was that ever exacerbated by being in an elite sport environment? Could that be to the detriment of an athlete?
I think yes, I definitely had those feelings and things, but that ability for me to compartmentalize a bit, I guess, was really quite strong, and I had confidence and strength within my ability. But that's not to say that didn't start eating into my netball worth as well, because definitely at times, and this, I guess, I had a really early on a big lesson in not reading the social media stuff and things like that. And back in those days, there was, social media wasn't as big as what it is now. But just somebody pointed out to me at one stage when I was feeling quite low, and it was from a place of wanting to back me up almost. Somebody kind of mentioned to me off the cuff, just, don't read that stuff that people are saying about you. I've got on and tried to back you up, and I'm behind you, type of thing. But I had no idea that there was a bunch of people who were trolling me on some of these netball forums. And of course, curiosity got the better of me at times, and I wanted to check what people were saying, what people were thinking. I mean, the way that I've kind of described some of the feeling sometimes for me is that it's almost like that part of my brain is a little bit of it's like a parasite. And so the parasite is attracted to the negativity. It wants to feed on negative things. And once that parasite has had a bit of a feed, it actually becomes stronger. It becomes bigger. It becomes hungrier and more attracted to that negativity, which it becomes a bit of a cycle that is really hard to break. So.
I think that is such a brilliant analogy, and it is so highly relatable. And this is sort of something we spoke about, I think it was with Courtney Bruce on our high performance mindset episode, is around wanting to move away from needing such external validation and sort of going on like, what has my boss said about me, or what's feedback am I getting from my co-workers, or what have people said about the podcast, and actually putting all of that to the side and having my own kind of internal motivators. Those are the things actually that I'm trying to work towards valuing, rather than the external stuff and what people are saying, and actually putting all of that to the side. And I suppose, having gone through such a journey, I imagine, you've referenced reading books and listening to podcasts and all that kind of stuff. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received about managing your mental health?
One of them was quite brutal at the time, but it was such a big kick up the bum that I needed. So I was a part of the Diamond squad. Norma Plummer was still the coach at the time, and I was kind of in the time where mental toughness was a really big thing, and we'd go and do all those boot camps, and they'd try and break you, and all of that type of. So that's kind of setting the scene, I guess, a little bit. So I was really quite not secretive, but just didn't want to show at times that I was struggling, because I was concerned and worried about, if they think that I'm struggling, I won't get picked, I won't get selected, all of that kind of stuff. But I tapped into a team psychologist with the Diamonds, and quite brutally, he said to me at one stage, it's not about you, like, get out of your own head, and what have you done to help other people, like that type of thing. And I was kind of like, well, really? Like, oh, okay. Like, it was just such a big shift, because I felt I was so internalizing, and so everything was about how I was dealing with the world, and how, and then all of a sudden he just threw that one at me with like, well, how are you helping others? And I was like, well, I'm not at the moment, and so he actually set me on a really important path. I started going on the Salvation Army food van runs around the city, feeding the homeless people, as a result of his advice. And to a certain extent, it was helping me as well, because it was getting myself out of, why was I so concerned and worried about what was going on with me? I've got a roof over my head. I've got meals on the table. I'm so blessed in so many ways, and got so many things to be grateful and thankful for. So it was kind of a two-pronged approach. One, it got me out of my own head to go and help others, and realize the gratefulness and the things, positive things that were in my life, but also did have the impact of being able to get out and help others. And that was a real big thread that I think has followed me throughout my career. Well, not followed me. I've made conscious decisions and choices to help others. You know, I've done all sorts of different charity ambassador roles. I've been to some of the third world countries and done a whole bunch of netball clinics. I go to the outback and throw myself into helping a lot of the Indigenous communities and things like that. So it really set me on a path of getting outside of myself, and seeing the worth in being able to help others.
I absolutely love that. And I always think of it as oftentimes on any situation, you get advice from so many different sources, and some of it's going to be good and some of it's not going to be good. And then there's going to be one little gem that really just, it can be the key to kind of opening the door to your recovery and your next stage. And I think, you know, we've talked earlier about all the different ways that you do have to manage your mental health, or that we all have, you know, treatments, including talking therapies, other kind of creative therapies, medication, meditation, and much more. And we know that also factors like nutrition and exercise can play a role in prevention or alleviation of some minor symptoms. But there are even kind of simpler things than that, like what you mentioned, which actually kind of revolve around gratitude, things like either a daily positive affirmation, journaling, reminding ourselves of all the kind of positivity and warmth in our lives, being grateful, and then also externally giving that to others by volunteering or contributing in the community. So how big a part do you think that gratitude plays in supporting mental health?
I think I guess I'll make the link between what I was talking about before with that, the way that your mind sometimes in dealing with poor mental health can be attracted to a lot of that negative things and wanting to almost seek that out. And across my netball career, it's kind of a blessing and a curse, the way that your brain wants to, you know, I talk about kind of the high performance mode. My brain would constantly just want perfection on the netball court. Like I would shoot 53 goals out of 54 shots and I would be so focused on that one shot that I missed, you know?
Yeah.
So having that mindset of perfection, it probably drove me to be better in terms of getting out there and really training super hard so that I could be perfect with what I was doing out there on the court, but at the same time having that real focus on just that one shot that I missed and ignoring the 53 that I got in. And that's the place where gratitude can play a really big part of shifting your mindset to look at the positive and actually recognize the positives that are around you. You know, within the Diamonds environment for quite a few years, we actually brought gratitude into the camp, you know, on different tours. I remember Lisa Alexander would, you know, give everybody a challenge that, you know, you need to go out and do some kind of a random act of kindness for somebody within this community that we're here in Townsville. We've never played a game in Townsville. Please go out and do something amazing in the community, you know, and those types of things, to see the way that kind of reverberated, and, you know, it just brings so much energy and positive focus back for you. So rather than, you know, yes, we do get very focused on, oh, that one ball that I threw away, as opposed to all of the positive and the good stuff that you do out on the court. So yeah, I think gratitude is a really great tool and a path to you know, shining a light back onto the positives.
I think that's so fascinating. And actually, I think this is partly why team sports in particular can be such a like a tool to help you with your mental health, because it is about more than just you. Like, there, you know, the term netball family exists for a reason. And I think like we're even starting to see more things like social prescribing, because we know that the benefits of being in a sort of community environment and being able to contribute to something that's bigger than yourself can really play a part in recovery as well. And looking a bit more at your career specifically, in 2020, in the COVID hub season, you won a second premiership with the Vixens, but sort of in a parallel to the grand final win that you had 11 years prior, you were also experiencing significant challenges off the court at the time, as your father was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer in that year, and the pandemic just made things infinitely more difficult for everyone. So how do you compare your mental health in 2009 versus 2020 in terms of all the learnings that you've taken during that time. How do you compare the two different but also similar scenarios?
Very different. And I hadn't actually made that connection that those two premiership years for me were probably some of the biggest mental health challenges that I'd dealt with, because 2009 I was dealing with severe depression and managed to win a premiership. And yeah, like you said, 2020 was, I wasn't in poor mental health, but I needed to apply every single piece of learning that I had across my entire career and life in order to do what I needed to do that season. Like you said, there were so many challenges that got thrown at us. One day, if I ever get around to writing a book, I feel like you could have a whole book on that year. But the challenges and things that happened that season, we had COVID happen, obviously, so the season got delayed. We weren't able to train or do anything with our teams, so we were literally doing footwork in our driveway with Zoom. Like, I had my computer sitting on the back of a car, and like I was using beer coasters as cones in my driveway to do agility footwork. We weren't allowed to even throw a ball to one of our teammates. So we also brought in the change in rules that season, the super shot that happened at the final bit. I mean,
they absolutely chose violence by introducing that in that
100%. Let chaos reign. Honestly.
As if you guys didn't have enough going on to also just be like, oh yeah, casually just changing the rules for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
What is that about?
Changing the rules. We also, because we were fearful that the season wasn't going to go ahead, and obviously felt immense pressure, I guess, to carry on the legacy of everybody else who has gone before you, to maintain and have this season. We can't afford to lose the competition and to not be out there playing and things. So we took 70% pay cuts straight off the bat. 100% of our playing group agreed to that straight off the bat so that we could still get the season away. So, you know, the turmoil and the things that we went through that season. I also had played 17 years of my 18-year career as a goal shooter, and the final year I had to learn a new position and get my fitness up like crazy, which in hindsight, the extra couple of months of training at home actually came in handy to do a few more running sessions to get me fit enough to do that. But we talk about being able to control the controllables, and we, as athletes, a lot of the time we try to control everything. And that was such a huge learning that year, of being able to let go of things that we couldn't control, because we constantly were being thrown curveball after curveball. We had to deal with a 2-week quarantine, whereas a lot of the other teams didn't have to deal with quarantine. You know, there were so many things that just went wrong. I mean, one of the biggest challenges for me was making the decision to go up into the hub, knowing that my dad had been really unwell. He'd suffered heart attacks where mum only just got him to hospital in time, and things like that due to the illness that he was dealing with at home. Having the months leading up to that as well, not being able to see him because the lockdown status of us not being able to get to regional areas kind of happened. I had one training session in the lead up to us leaving where I went to go and get COVID tested so that I was 100% sure that I wasn't going to take COVID to my dad, who was immunocompromised. And as I was driving to get the COVID test, the team doctor rang me up and said, turn on the radio, they've just put a border in place. You're not going to be able to drive to get to see your dad. If you leave it too late, you need to turn around and leave immediately to get there. Otherwise, you won't see him before you go. So to turn around in the car, I had to I called the coach on the way and just said, I can't come to training. Sorry, I've got to go and see my dad because the hard border is going to be in place tomorrow. If I don't go tonight, I won't see him. And that might be the last time that I see my dad before not knowing, because at the time when I left, I didn't know if that was going to be the last time that I would see him. So making that decision and knowing and having his blessing that he wanted me to go and to play and to and we were playing, we were doing it for Victoria. Victoria, our state, was one of the heaviest impacted and dealt with a lot of the hardest lockdowns, a lot of the hardest challenges. Those types of challenges was what I was dealing with behind the scenes. We also had 2 games a week, by the way, rather than just playing one game a season. They condensed it all, but that meant that we had to get ourselves up for multiple games a week. Just another curveball thrown at us. But yeah, it was one of the most challenging things that I have ever had to do and ever had to deal with. So I guess that toolkit of things for me, filling my cup with all of the things that I needed on my days off and being able to enjoy, small moments and things as well. But it absolutely took every ounce of strength, every one of the tools that I had in my toolkit. And then while we're away, I also made the decision that I was going to retire. It was going to be my final year. So just another thing that got thrown in there. So it was a truly epic season. And yeah, it's definitely one that had so many different challenges that it just made it very crazy. And, we kind of, our catch cry was, why not us? Like, if we're going through all of this, well, why not us? We're probably had to deal with more adversity than most of the other teams, and we didn't want it to be for nothing. So, what else have you got? Throw something else. Oh, yep, okay, we're going to do that too. All right, we'll jump over that hurdle too. So it was, it was the biggest and most challenging thing that I think I've ever done.
I mean, I am just astounded by the resilience and the mental fortitude of our athletes and the people in our game. Like, it is so remarkable. Like you say, hurdle after hurdle after hurdle and curveball and, everything thrown in for good measure. Like, to be able to come out on top and actually win the premiership as well. Like, oh my goodness, it's almost like a fairy tale. Like, you can't even write that, really. And I know... I think it goes back to sort of what you said at the beginning as well about not changing the path that you've been on, because actually if you hadn't have had all those difficulties in the previous 17 years up until that year, would you have been able to cope with the COVID season as well as you did? Like, who knows? Like, it really has, all our past experiences really turn us into the people that we are today. And obviously we know, like, now I feel like we're in a much better place in terms of talking about mental health and being far more open. There's loads of discussions around it compared to, say, 10 years ago, and it's becoming an increasingly open topic. Like, it's not uncommon now for athletes and figures in the public eye to share their experiences like you have and to really reduce that stigma. So in your view, what do we need to do next to further improve our collective mental health, particularly in netball?
Well, I think that we've definitely taken some big steps in the way that the athletes and people are supported. I mean, the wellbeing manager that I had at the Diamonds level and I became really close because I was almost a case study for the support that was being put in place for not only the Diamonds, but club level as well, but also for the organisation. I think it takes a lot of leadership, and we need more leaders that are willing to be the ones that stand in that room and say we need more funding for the support to be put in place. I know that we had a Diamonds high performance manager and also the head coach who fought so hard for the funding to have that staff member that was going to be there through a lot of that, and to put the programs and things in place in order to support everybody, like the infrastructure, it's going to help so many of the athletes, if not all of the athletes, to put this support in place. But I know that I was one of the people that needed it the most. So to have strong leaders that see that it's a priority, absolutely a priority, that the support and the infrastructure around athletes needs to be put in place. And I think one of the biggest things was that, especially Diamond's coach, Lisa Alexander, it was amazing to know that she fought so hard for those things to happen, but then removed herself from wanting to know all of the ins and outs of what was going on with that support. She trusted that staff member, Angie Bain was her name, to bring things to her attention if it needed to be. But if things were going okay and we were on top of everything, she didn't want to have her judgment clouded of, is Caitlin going to get out there and do the job today? Not sure, because I know X, Y, Z. Well, actually, and Angie Bain has told me, and I trust Angie Bain, that everything's going okay with Caitlin and we've got access to her. Awesome. So some of the things that we put in place were like a traffic light system. So not just for me, for all athletes. And it's actually filtered down to all of our club levels now, is that, before going away to some of our major marquee events, wellbeing managers will use a bit of a traffic light system. Green, good to go hard, in a really great place, ready to take on everything. Orange, got some challenges, some things bubbling under the surface, but we're on top of things. And red, maybe today's not the day to single out that athlete and make an example of them at training because they're, a little bit fragile today. So, so to be able to have some things put in place like that for the structure and the help around the team, I think it's been incredible for me to have been a part of that and to see the way that the support has kind of grown across my time. I'm a little bit fearful that things may have taken a bit of a step back in terms of the amount of support that's being provided now, but that was a huge thing for me, and what I really felt like was a little bit of the legacy that I left behind was kind of helping develop some of those programs and support things, because it was what I needed to get through. But to know that I wasn't cast aside because of the challenges and the extra things that I might have needed was such a really big thing. And I think in terms of the investment, the payback for the investment and trust that the program for Diamonds had in me, I've been to 2 World Cups and 2 Com Games and got some pretty awesome medals and been a part of a lot of trophies and world number 1 the entire time I was a part of the program across nearly 10 years. So, if when you're talking to the people in the boardrooms where they're, hanging their hats on trophies and things like that, I think it's been great to show that I wasn't a liability, and other athletes, they're not, you can actually add so much to the program. So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, that what a way to finish this episode. Like that is so remarkable, and I find that so impactful. And I mean, thank you to you and to so many others, the Nat Butlers, the Chelsea Pittmans, the Caitlin Thwaites of the world, for being the trailblazers in all these different topics. And I just dread to think of what position the sport would be in if we didn't have people like you. So a huge thank you from us and the netball family for your candor and your generosity, and a huge thank you for coming on the show today.
No problems at all. And yeah, I hope that in sharing that story, I haven't talked about it for a while. I've been removed and retired and caught up in mum life, but it's also a really good reminder to me of all of those positive bits and pieces that you need to do on a daily basis to maintain your wellness. So I've really enjoyed sharing some of those experiences with you guys, and hope that it can find a new audience and people are willing to stick their hand up and seek help when they need it, and those around people can provide that support. And really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Qtr Time. We can't wait to bring you even more netball chats and another super special guest next week.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Qtr Time Pod for all the latest netball updates. Get involved in the conversation online by... Luce, are you eating a blueberry?
Yeah.
We're recording!
Everyone though, you can't hear me. Hey, snacks are life, all right?
Okay, yeah, snacks alive. Anyway, get involved in the conversation online by letting us know what you thought of the matches this weekend and which players have stood out for you. And let us know if you're listening to the podcast while eating blueberries.
Just swallow my blueberry. We'd also really appreciate it if you can take a moment to rate and review, maybe not review this section of the podcast. Oh, it's late in the day. Yeah, if you could just rate and review, because it really does help other people to find the podcast and they can listen to me eating food. If you enjoy listening to the pod, do let us know. Spread the word of your netball pals so that even more people can get involved. And finally, don't forget to take advantage of our exclusive 15% discount with Lovell Netball by entering the code NETPOD15 at the checkout at lovellnetball.co.uk. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.